You've been getting a little bit of pushback lately on your Harris prediction, but you're standing by this.
Absolutely.
The sign's as clear as day. And the number one sign is that Harris, simply put, is more popular than Donald Trump.
And then Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, the Rust Belt, the blue wall holds right there.
I'm not worried about Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania is looking good for Harris.
I do too.
Trump peut balayer le reste de la carte des États compétitifs. Il n'aura pas assez de grands électeurs.
Wisconsin und Michigan und Pennsylvania, das, was die Demokraten die blaue Wand nennen.
Ninguém fazer qualquer tipo de previsão de que ou outro lado.
Nessuno davvero in questo momento rischia di dire vincerà Harris o vincerà Trump.
Y esto está muy reñido, gente.
Michel Salvatore.
Кому отдадут предпочтение эти штаты?
하리스 씨가 48%, 트럼프 씨가 48.4%.
This is one of the closest elections that we have seen.
Anyone who tells you they know the answer to that but is making it up. Look, it's basically a statistical tie.
We have a 80% chance, according to my scenarios, that we will see Donald Trump in his second term.
We are projecting at this hour the 47th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
President-elect Donald Trump has officially swept all 7 battleground states.
Donald Trump has completed his decisive victory in the US presidential election.
Trump sarà presidente degli Stati Uniti.
Et lui conforter un peu plus dans sa victoire, il l'emporte dans les 7 États clés.
Donald Trump volverá à la Casa Blanca.
Donald Trump é o novo presidente dos Estados Unidos da América.
En geteld, maar het is nu al zeker dat Donald Trump heeft gewonnen.
美国总统大选的最后开票结果已经出炉了。
Hi, welcome to the Nexus. This time in this special episode, we're not going to do a full risk analysis, but rather take this as an update from the previous one, which was the American elections. A second term of Donald Trump. You have seen probably dozens of videos popping up from traditional media telling you what a second term of Donald Trump is going to look like, or you have maybe seen a lot of things. I'm not going to go into the details in this video of internal affairs such as human rights or the right of abortion and these kind of things, because it's not my specialty, it's not my area. I analyze the risk on foreign policy and risk that will affect businesses. So let's start with the beginning. Of course, the economy. The economy has played a central part in Trump's re-election, and people remember his 2016 tenure. The electorate have a perception that the times were better, that goods cost less, and I've seen another analysis where they also called the Trump victory, and they used the 13 keys to the White House. But instead of giving the key number 13 as false, they give the key number 6, the key about the GDP growth, because even if the real GDP growth happened, the electorate perceived in the swing states, in 4 of the 7 swing states, that their gross domestic product per capita has not grown. So it's very important to understand the perception. Well, here, the economy has played a central role, and exactly what's Trump's plan? His policies are quite broad. He wants to concentrate in a central in a specific area for affordable house, which would be have more land available to build houses, less taxes to build houses, and cheaper goods. I'm not going to go into the details of affordable house, but rather on two central aspects of his economic program, which are his tax cuts. So Donald Trump intends to cut significantly corporate tax and also personal tax, such as the tipped wage. He also discussed removing completely income tax, but let's go part by part. First, for the corporate tax, what he is intending for this is to have American companies that are currently outsourcing their manufacture to go back in the United States as he did in his previous term, but in a much larger scale. In his previous term, when he started his tariff trade war with China, you have seen some companies such as Apple who had to come back and open factories in the United States, and they have open factories, for example, in Texas. He wants to do the same thing, but in a much larger scale. Why this time? I think he's going to be able to do it in a bigger scale than in 2016. Well, it's pretty simple. Because Trump now has a full house, he won the House of Representatives in top of his election. He is almost fully there in the Senate, even if at the time I'm recording this, they're trying to dispute one seat. The Democrats are trying to dispute one seat. And he has the majority on the Congress. So basically, the legal system that was impeding or restraining the implementation of tariffs is now almost gone. As of right now, there are laws that already allow the president to make significant tariffs. And one thing about the tariff trade war with China, we're going to come back at this, but it's not that Trump started it and now he has to start it over. He started it, but Biden escalated it even further. So he just has to continue. And laws already exist. You have the Section 232, you have Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974, you have the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, you have the Section 201 of the Trade Act of 1974. So you have a lot of laws that already exist, but if Trump wants to make more laws, he will be able. He will be able, and it's going to be much faster implemented than before. So yeah, you have heard that he said that he wants to put a clean 10% tariff import on all goods, and with China he wants to put at least 60%, and even with Mexico he wants to put 200% on cars. I also believe that they will find a solution. He will use his leverage. And remember, there is a guy named Elon Musk. I don't know if it sounds familiar. He is with Trump's cabinet, and his company, Tesla, have massive factories on Mexico. So if basically he was to put a 200% tariffs on cars EV, it will kill Tesla. Maybe not kill, but it will hurt them so much. And why will he hurt his friend and the man that spent millions in his campaign? Yes, Tesla will build more factories on the United States, especially with the tax cut, and then they will just use this position, leverage it, and have the best deal possible. So I don't expect a complete dismantlement of Mexico in the North American free trade. So he wants to really do it in a large scale, and tariffs are not new, but since the GATT Accords that led to the creation of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Well, he wants to do this 10% tariff. Sometimes he says 15, 20. Will this mean that he will do it for all countries on all sectors? Well, the answer is simple: no. And I'm going to explain why. The reason why he wants to put these tariffs, it's because the United States is by far the country with the most trade deficit in the world. Now, what does it mean, trade deficit? This fancy word. What does it imply? Well, let me explain it simply. So trade deficit basically implies that you buy and import more goods than you sell. Because you're importing more goods that you export, you have a deficit in your balance. You're spending more money on the trade that you receive. Which means that one, you have a dependency toward this country because you need this product and you're making them richer. And two, you're not making money on the deal. And before I have a figure that before the Trump tariffs, the United States had a trade deficit with China that was gigantic. It was more than $350 billion in deficit. So basically, the United States was making China super rich. And China wasn't given much in counterpart. They weren't importing much in counterpart. What you want is a balanced relation where I'm going to export a lot of goods in a sector, and I'm going to import a certain type of good from your country, but it's going to be balanced so that I can specialize in one sector, in one field, and you can do the same thing, and we are going to be both profitable in this exchange. That wasn't the case. And the United States is by far the country with the biggest trade deficit in the world. Among the principal ones, there is China, of course, there is Germany, there is Canada, there is Mexico. And you will remark that Canada and Mexico are in a free trade agreement with the United States, which is the renewed USMCA. And in 2025, there is a clause in this agreement for a review. And this review will be important because if the review is not going to be good, there won't be a consensus on this review on making some adjustments on the way forward, on some policy changes. Well, the agreement will collapse, and that's the thing. It won't collapse. Okay, I'm going to tell you in advance. It won't collapse because it's not in the benefit of the United States to do that, nor in the benefit of Canada and Mexico, who are incredibly dependent on the United States. But what the United States will do is to use this leverage to negotiate with Canada so that they can even further try to break a long-lasting history of protectionism on Canadian dairy. And with Mexico, they will try to make them align with the United States because as of right now, Mexico is not aligned with the US. They play with the US, they play with China. And for example, when there was this trade war, Mexico was used by China to outsource their factories, and so they can produce Chinese electrical vehicles and sending them and selling them to the United States. So that's that. And I've seen a lot of economists criticize this measure. I'm not saying I'm in favor or against, I'm just explaining how it works. And they were saying before the election, they made an open letter signed by I don't remember how many economists, saying that it will be super detrimental for a free trade agreement, for free trade, for the economy in general. And be careful. Okay, be careful when you read Economist online, when you see these appearing in traditional media. Just be careful. I'm not saying that they're not good. I'm saying that a good economist will appear with his opinion and his name. When you hear Dr. Barry telling that there is a risk of a home mortgage recession in 2008, you should have believed him. When you see him that there's going to be an increase in inflation, you should believe him. But when he gives an opinion, you will see the news as Dr. Barry, na. Warren Buffett, na. When you see a news with 100 economists say that, usually it's because they're not very good. I'm sorry to disclaim, to say it as this, but it's the reality. I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm just saying that in economist, in the field of economist, the importance lies in the quality, not in the quantity. And there is an example very clear with Javier Milei in Argentina. When there was this election, there was like 100 economists saying that he will be a danger to the economy, that he should not be voted, should not be trusted. He's going to destroy the economy. And the result is that in the last quarter of 2024. He was able to reduce inflation significantly. When he took office, it was at 25%. Now it sits in 3.5%, and the government deficit still is at 0 as he promised. That's catastrophic, right? That's catastrophic. And coming back with the tax cuts, he's going to use tax cut to further incentivize this renationalization and the reindustrialization of the United States. I have built a special indicator to know which sectors are going to be are more prone to nationalism. Until he doesn't take charge, it's hard for me to judge. So you will have some news on that when I will find some sectors that are more in danger than others. But until now, you can expect it in discretionary, technology, manufacturing, and health system and healthcare sectors. And hey, if you're a business, that's not all bad news for you. Tariffs are scary, I get it, but it doesn't mean that you are going to be hurted by them. In fact, one of the first tariffs that Trump did in his first term was a tariff on Chinese washing machines. Yeah, why washing machines? He was testing the waters. And what happened is that firstly, the increase on tariff was absorbed by consumers, so the prices went a little bit up for Chinese manufacturers that sold in the US. What happened then is that American companies that were producing the washing machines locally, they also jacked up a little bit the prices. Because let's say that your objective is to be $50 less expensive than your competitor. Your competitor pushes the price from $350 to $400. You don't have to sit at $300. You can jack it up at $350, and the consumer demand will not decrease. And then a very, very clever strategy that was implemented was to also increase the prices of connected goods who were not directly impacted by these tariffs, but they were able to cover a little bit the cost. And that was done with the dryers. The dryer prices went up crazily because normally when you buy a washing machine, you buy a dryer. So the price of washing machine went up by 10% and the price of dryers went up by 20%. So at the end of the day, you have made a net increase of 20% in your revenue, and people still buy it. So it's not all bad news. Don't panic. There is always ways to mitigate and even to create further revenue streams. However, if I were you, I wouldn't wait until it happens. I will start planning now. I will start planning now for the next fiscal year to expect a 10% tariff if you are in one of the countries that have a trade deficit with the United States, and that they have not and they are not in a trade agreements, because also this is something that's very important. But the United States has like 10 free trade agreements in a lot of different regions. So if you are in one of those free trade agreements, you shouldn't worry. Yes, there's going to have some rumors. There's going to be a room for renegotiation, but you shouldn't worry that much. If you're not on these free trade agreements and your country is in a trade deficit with the if from the country's perspective they are in a trade surplus with the United States, so they sell more goods than they buy from the United States. So from the point of view of the United States, they are in a trade deficit with that country. You should expect that this 10% tariff will arrive, and you should prepare by already implementing and diversifying your supply chains and these ways of mitigate it. Point number 2, Asia-Pacific relations under Trump. Here lies the category where we are in the southern Eastern Asia, and of course the question of Taiwan. What will happen? Well, it's pretty simple. I expect Trump to maintain his strong stance on Taiwan, even if Biden was doing it less loudly. He made some recent developments where it was pretty intended that a security agreement was almost being drafted with Taiwan, and China was sure that if they invaded it, the United States were going to act. They also made in 2023 a bilateral agreement with the Philippines, and during this year they have made significant, incredible cooperated military exercises with the Philippines, with Japan, with South Korea. They are building new naval bases, military bases, and I expect Trump to continue this way. However, Trump is a transactionalist, and he will do like in his first term. He's going to ask for money. He's going to use his position to leverage. He has no problem on helping other states affording their security, but as he says, you will have to pay. He sees it as an insurance company. You want the protection of the United States, you pay. That's his point of view, and he will be able to do it. And he will press it, and Taiwan will have to pay a part of their gross domestic product to the United States to afford their security, their military support. So expect that. Maybe when I say that they're going to pay, they're not going to pay a flat fee like $2 million per year. No, but they will have to make some trades, some concessions. For example, we have seen that under Trump, the United States broke the record of arms that were sold to Taiwan with $18 billion in 40 years. And this is something that he's going to do in the rest of the of Asia Pacific. He will do more agreements. He will reunite with Kim Jong-un because there are things that need to be addressed as soon as possible. You have first the presence of North Korean troops in Ukraine, which is massive. I want to do a dedicated video on that. I have already prepared it. And then you have them saying that, accusing the United States and South Korea of preparing a nuclear attack, and that they have already started to prepare. They have done a symbolic act, a symbolic thing, where they have blown up the symbolic peaceful routes that connected the two Koreas, and the North Korea started to blow them up. This is an act of saying that there are huge tensions. So yeah, on the Ukraine issue, it's a completely change on the paradigm. The previous paradigm was escalating the tension, escalating the conflict, sending $55 billion on military aid, on weapons, and what it has resulted is it's the beginning of World War III, because the moment you have the presence of outside troops from a third country, you are in an international conflict, you are in a world war. And because you have so much presence of military weapons of also other countries, the potential for having more than 3 countries involved is absurdly high. And that's why with Trump it's going to change. He has said it, and there is interest in it, and you will see it in the next video. But basically my scenarios are that there's going to be an objective of paralyzing and freezing the conflict. In a certain extent, there can be truces, there can be some peace agreements, and there is definitely going to be negotiations, which until now haven't really happened. Well, I'm lying. A couple of days ago, for the first time, Zelensky and Putin were starting a negotiation deal a deal where the two were going to accept not aiming the attacks on energy sites, because basically Ukraine has strategic sites. I think they also have a nuclear sites, and the same goes for Russia, and they want to avoid a catastrophe. But it's also a way, because they could have done it 2 years ago, and they did it the same week of the election. And this is a way for them to say, we are going to start disintensifying the conflict. And depending on how well the Western country will do with their economy and their current positions, we will see a stronger leverage in the negotiations, but definitely the conflict is going to be frozen. Russia needs time to rebuild its military. Ukraine needs time to further improve their commercial relations with the European Union. And I think depending on how effective the European Union and also the United States will be in these negotiations, we can see some concessions, such like, for example, giving Crimea and the secessionist regions to Russia, but on the other hand, accepting that Ukraine will enter the European Union. It sounds crazy. Just check my next video. You will understand everything. Point number 4, the Middle East strategy. So for the Middle East, I think that remember that Trump is the most he has classified himself as the most pro-Israeli president ever. That's true. His economic policies will need a lot of funding, especially by cutting taxes and implementing tariffs. He needs the money coming from somewhere, and Israel is a very good source of revenue. However, I think that under Trump we will not see a nuclear escalation with Iran, or at least is going to be much less likely. For the Palestinian conflict, I have already recorded a new format, a discussion format, a podcast with a special guest of mine. So you will see more on that. But what I think it's going to happen is that Israel will disintensifying their strategy of bombing and aggression. They're going to disintensify because two things. First, the United States need to concentrate their efforts on the Houthis that are destroying vessels going in the Red Sea route, and they need to secure this passage for the commerces, for the business, American businesses. And then there's going to be a deepened tie with Saudi Arabia, who has been calling for the US to do a security deal for some time. We have seen Trump talking with the prince. His son-in-law was also seen already discussing terms, and it should be expected that and it seems from Washington sources that they are the Trump administration is keen on helping Saudi Arabia developing nuclear civilian program, giving them the nuclear infrastructure and stuff. But they know that sooner or later Saudi Arabia will develop the program, so they rather, have the hand on it, have the control on it, so it doesn't grow into a nuclear threat, nuclear bomb threat. But because of how Saudi Arabia is with Iran, which yes, the diplomatic relations have been reestablished thanks to China, who is also trying to exert her influence and say, I'm now the new hegemon. United States need to recuperate the influence, especially given the relation between Trump and Aramco. So expect a presence in the Middle East. Expect a balancing between the Arab world and Israel. They will not leave Israel. They will help Israel, but they will also help countries like Saudi Arabia, who from the distance claims to help Palestine. So yeah, for the Palestinian conflict, I know many of you are interested, but again, in terms of businesses, there is not a lot of relevance if it's not the reputational damage. And again, companies that were super affected, like McDonald's or Starbucks, have recovered their revenues. You can see their stock; they're good as they're doing business as usual. So it's more a humanitarian cause, and that's why I'm going to do a special issue, a separated episode on that. And 5, Last but not least, the Chinese trade war. Of course, he's going to continue his trade war with China. As I said, Biden has also escalated it before with the CHIPS Acts of 2021. It was a massive one. They didn't say it out loud. They didn't claim it out loud, but they continued this further escalation. And there is something that has been said multiple times on this trade war, is that it has costed the US more than $300 billion. Yes, the cost is super high. However, what does it cost to China? How China has reacted to these tariffs? Well, it also has massively backfired on China. Economically, they had the same cost. And also in their spread of influence in the Asia-Pacific countries, they also been very, very affected. Because when the United States puts tariffs on Chinese imports and China retaliated, there were mitigation strategies for American companies that went out from China and they started building enterprises in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in other countries that were near, where the cost of manufacturing were still lower than in the West, and they were able to mitigate it. So the trade between the Philippines, for example, and the United States increased, and the trade between the Philippines and China decreased. The same with Singapore, the same with Indonesia. Even though China, one, is closer than this country, two, they have massive projects such as the Road and Belt Initiative, which are a massive infrastructures that allow the connection between countries, between the regions, but ultimately leading to China. And thanks to the tariff that were first imposed by Trump, the trade balance between these countries, between China and this region, significantly decreased in comparison with the trade balance with the United States, where in some cases it even increased. So here is the game of the trade tariffs. Tariffs are going to be a foreign policy tool to hinder the influence of contesting powers. Again, Russia has allies, and Russia has done a recent meeting with the BRICS, which was considered the biggest meeting, the biggest summit, the most important summit on Russian history, blah blah blah, in the medias. Russia is not isolated, but Russia has one knee down. They are consumed by the war in Ukraine. So now it's very difficult for them to claim hegemony. To claim the hegemony as undisputed as they did it in the past. Now the enemy is China. For the United States, it's China. They are the one who can claim the hegemony. They are the ones. But they also face the same issues that the United States. Their economy is fragile. It's not in the best moment. They're in a risk of recession. And with the tariffs, even if it will cost some money to the United States, even if, yes, it's not going to be the most efficient solution, for China, it's going to be even worse. So now, even if I said multiple times that Trump has this art of the win-win of operating in a total sum, in this particular situation, he's going to operate in a negative sum. So maybe it's going to be a lose-lose, but they will lose more. And they will be able to mitigate this risk by exerting a greater influence in other regions. Basically, a second Trump term would lead to a significant economic battle, a different shift on how to dispute influences, but where the national security and the national interest of the United States, it will always be the one that prevails, and where they will carefully select where to engage, how to engage, and when to engage. It's the end of United States everywhere doing everything all at once because it hasn't worked. Remember what I said in my analysis. There is no major foreign policy victory in all Biden's administration. There is multiple failures. And that's something that they will try to revert. This doesn't mean that they're going to drastically change their position. No, they will not quit NATO, but they will make sure that every country pays the 2% GDP. No, they will not abandon Taiwan, but they will make sure that Taiwan buys a lot of weapons. So on, so on, so on. This will be his way of operate. It's a transactionist way of operate. So as much as Trump's second term is not going to be all sunshine and rainbows, it's not going to be an apocalypse neither. All you need is someone that can see through this fog, that can navigate through the storm and always bring you inland. You need someone that you can trust, someone who was able to see beyond what was shown to him. You don't need to listen to traditional media, the same media that lied to you, the same media that said that he will lose, that it was unpredictable, that there is no way to know, that said that it's going to be World War III, that they were bombing, that the United States now will completely let Ukraine alone, and that Russia will obliterate the rest of Europe. All you need is someone that can guide you, like I did. I'm not always going to be right, but I will always see where the land is. Follow my channel. Be careful for the next episode. Follow me on my social media where I post the latest things, the latest developments. And in my blog, you will always have the information firsthand. It takes a lot of time for me to do videos. It takes maximum an hour for me to post my blogs. Don't forget to share this with your friends. If you're a business, now more than ever, you need my help. Feel free to contact me in my personal email address. Send me your inquiry. I will answer for free, and I will also draft a risk analysis for you as a proof of this. Wherever you are, good evening, good night, or good morning. See you.